The wind screamed across the broken horizon of Orion, 13, a planet where sunlight was dim and mercy was extinct. Rust clouds drifted over endless junk fields, and every gust carried the metallic taste of failure. For most, this was hell. For Eli Grant, it was just another day trying to stay alive. Once, he'd been an engineer for the United Earth Fleet. Now he was just a man with a rusted shovel and too many regrets. The sky burned orange above him as he dug through twisted wreckage, searching for anything the scrap buyers might pay for. His suit's filters buzzed with static. His hands were numb. His hope was long gone. He paused to wipe the sweat from his forehead, staring at the half-buried husk of an old battleship. The insignia on its hull was alien, curved runes from a forgotten war. Another ghost from the galaxy's trash can, he muttered. Every day he dug, and every day the planet reminded him that dreams didn't survive here. Then, as his shovel struck metal, he heard a sound that didn't belong, a faint thump, then a muffled cry. He froze. The wind howled again, but beneath it came a trembling voice, so soft it barely existed. Help! Eli's pulse spiked. He dropped the shovel and pressed his ear to the ground. Nothing. Then, another sound, closer this time. Someone was trapped under the junk. He tore through layers of scrap with frantic hands. Sheets of steel, cracked glass, dust that stung his eyes. He didn't care. Every breath felt like it could be the difference between saving a life or digging a grave. Hold on, he shouted into the ground. I'm here. After several minutes, his fingers hit something soft, fabric. He pushed harder, ripping away debris until a face emerged. Not human. Her skin was pale violet, her hair white as frost, tangled with dirt and wires. Her lips trembled as she gasped for air. Eli's heart nearly stopped. No way, he whispered. She was young, barely 16 by human standards, a child in any world. She blinked weakly, eyes glowing faint blue even in the gloom. You're alive, he said, disbelief cracking his voice. He pulled the last of the junk away, freeing her shoulders. Her body was thin, trembling, covered in scratches. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a melodic language he didn't know. Easy, Eli said gently. Don't move. He wrapped his jacket around her to block the cold wind. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. When she looked at him again, something desperate flashed in her eyes. Not just fear, but warning. She pointed weakly to the pit where she'd been buried, then dragged her finger across her throat. Eli understood instantly. Someone tried to kill you. Her head jerked in a trembling nod. He looked around the empty horizon, no one in sight. But a prickling in his gut told him they weren't alone. Someone had buried her alive out here. And whoever it was might come back to finish the job. He lifted her carefully. She weighed almost nothing, like she'd been starving for days. You're safe now, he murmured, though he wasn't sure it was true. The nearest settlement was 6 kilometers through poison wind and collapsing terrain. But leaving her here wasn't an option. As he walked, she clung to his chest, whispering strange words he couldn't understand. One word kept repeating, Vera. He guessed that was her name. The path to the settlement twisted between shattered engines and ancient war machines. Every shadow looked like a hunter, every echo like pursuit. By the time Eli reached the outskirts, a cluster of metal huts clinging to life under the smog. His arms burned from exhaustion. He pushed open the door to his cramped quarters and laid the girl on his bed. The air inside was thick with oil and dust, but at least it was safe. She opened her eyes again, watching him with both wonder and confusion. Water, he asked, offering a cracked bottle. She nodded faintly and drank. Her hands were small, her touch cold, unnaturally cold. She reached out and brushed his face, tracing his jaw as if she'd never seen a human before. It's okay, he said quietly. You're safe here. Outside, a rumble rolled across the sky. Engines, distant, but closing in. Eli went still, staring at the horizon through the window's grime. A formation of black ships sliced through the clouds, descending toward the junk fields he'd just left. He looked back at the alien girl, still shivering under his jacket. Who are you? He whispered. But deep down, he already knew. This wasn't luck. This was trouble. The kind that kills planets. And somehow, he was right in the middle of it. The night on Orion, 13, was never truly dark. The sky glowed with rust-colored clouds and streaks of lightning that crawled across the horizon like veins of fire. Eli sat beside the alien girl, Vera, as he now called her, watching the flickering lamp in his small quarters. Her breathing had steadied, but her sleep was uneasy. Every few minutes, she whispered in that strange, musical language, shivering as if trapped in a nightmare. He didn't blame her. The things that happened on this planet could haunt anyone. Still, something about her stirred a strange protectiveness in him, a feeling he hadn't known since before the wars, before Earth burned. He was rinsing the dirt off his hands when a dull thud echoed from outside. Then another. Then a low hum, like engines idling far too close. Eli froze. He moved to the narrow window, wiped the grime away with his sleeve, and peered into the darkness. 3 dark figures stood at the edge of the settlement. Their armor gleamed faintly under the toxic moonlight. Not miners. Not locals. Hunters. One of them raised a scanner, sweeping it across the huts. The device pulsed red when it faced Eli's direction. He cursed under his breath. They were tracking heat signatures or life signs. Maybe both. He turned back to Vera. She was awake now, eyes wide, sensing the danger before he even spoke. Vera, he whispered, we need to move. She sat up quickly, confusion and fear flashing in her expression. Hunt, they come, she managed to say in broken standard. You know them? Eli asked. She nodded, trembling. Brothers send kill. That word hit him hard. Brothers. Family. The realization made his stomach twist. Whoever wanted her dead wasn't some random enemy. This was blood betrayal on a royal scale. He grabbed his old field pack, shoving in a water bottle, rations, and his tool knife. Can you walk? She nodded again, though her legs were weak. He helped her stand, wrapping her in a dark cloak to hide her shimmering skin. Stay close. No sound. They slipped out the back door, just as a metallic clang shattered the silence. The front door had been kicked open. Voices filled the room, harsh, mechanical, echoing through the thin walls. Vera flinched, clutching Eli's arm. He led her through the narrow alleys between the huts, moving like a shadow among the junk heaps. The hunters' flashlights swept through the darkness, their beams slicing through fog and smoke. Eli's heart pounded so loud he thought they'd hear it. They crouched behind a rusted fuel tank. Vera's breathing was sharp and quick. He touched her shoulder gently, signaling for silence. One of the hunter's scanners beeped again. Trace detected, a metallic voice said. Moving east. Eli's pulse raced. East, that was exactly where they were. He pulled Vera toward a maintenance shaft that led under the settlement, half collapsed and smelling of oil and decay. Down here, he whispered. They crawled through the tight tunnel as the sounds of boots echoed above. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. The walls dripped with condensation and the stench of old waste. Halfway through, Vera stopped. Her hand pressed against his arm. Eli turned back. She was staring into the dark, eyes glowing faint blue. They follow, she whispered. He listened. Faint scraping sounds echoed behind them. The hunters were in the tunnel. Go, he hissed. He pushed her forward, crawling faster, his palms sliding through sludge. A plasma round seared past, melting the tunnel wall inches from his face. He didn't think. He turned, drew his old plasma cutter from his belt, and fired blindly down the tunnel. The flash lit the darkness like lightning. A scream followed, a mechanical howl. One down. They reached the exit hatch and burst out into the open junk fields. The cold wind hit them like knives. Vera stumbled, but Eli caught her before she fell. Far behind them, more shouts rose. The hunters were still coming. Keep moving, he said, pulling her along the uneven ground. The sky above flickered with red lights, drones scanning from above. He dragged her under a pile of collapsed hull plates. The air was tight and suffocating, but they were hidden. Vera clutched his hand, her body trembling violently. He looked into her glowing eyes and whispered, I don't know why they want you dead, but I'm not letting them take you. She blinked, confusion mixing with disbelief. Why help me? She asked softly. Eli stared out at the hunters moving in the distance. Because I've already lost everything once, he said. I'm not losing someone else. The words hung in the air like a promise. In the distance, the hunter's leader raised a communicator. The girl is alive, he said coldly. Her signal moved north. Send the hounds. Eli's stomach dropped at that word. He'd heard the stories. The hounds weren't animals, they were machines. Autonomous killers with scent-tracking AI. And they never stopped. He glanced at Vera. We've got minutes before they find this place. Then we run, she said. Her voice was fragile, but full of fire. Eli grinned despite the fear clawing at his chest. Now that's the spirit. As they crawled out of hiding and vanished into the metallic wasteland, the first hound's roar echoed through the night. Mechanical, shrill, and hungry. The hunt had begun. The night wind cut across the metal plains like broken glass. Eli and Vera ran, stumbling, gasping, but refusing to stop. Behind them, the roar of the mechanical hounds echoed through the wasteland. Each sound was sharper, closer. The junk fields stretched endlessly ahead, a maze of rusted ships, shattered drones, and twisted beams. Every step sent echoes bouncing across the wreckage. The toxic haze above glowed dimly, painting everything in a dull orange glow. Eli's lungs burned. The gravity here was heavier than Earth's, and every breath felt like dragging air through a furnace. Keep moving, he said through gritted teeth. They can't track what they can't catch. Vera nodded, her silver hair whipping in the wind, eyes glowing faintly with fear and determination. She was stronger than she looked, but still too weak to run long. Her voice trembled. They smell me. Machine knows. Eli knew what she meant. The hounds used scent analyzers keyed to DNA. The same tech used in wars to find fugitives. No human could outrun that, but humans could outthink it. Then we'll give them the wrong scent, he said. He spotted an overturned coolant tank leaking thick blue vapor. Inside now, Vera hesitated for a second, then followed him in. The cold mist stung their skin and numbed their fingers. Eli tore open a cracked fuel line and splashed it across the ground. This stuff will mess with their sensors. The first hound arrived moments later, a black, spider-like machine with glowing red optics and blades for legs. It sniffed the air, mechanical nose twitching, then paused, confused by the overlapping chemical signatures. Eli and Vera crouched inside the wreckage, barely daring to breathe. The hound tilted its head, scanning. Then, suddenly, it released a high-pitched shriek. Run! Eli shouted. They bolted from the tank just as the hound lunged, slicing through metal like butter. Shrapnel rained around them as they sprinted toward a ridge of broken cargo containers. A flash of plasma lit the night. The beam struck the ground inches behind them, throwing Eli off his feet. He hit the dirt hard, pain ripping through his ribs. The hound was closing fast, claws clicking against the metal ground. Vera turned, eyes wide with terror. Eli. He forced himself up, one arm clutching his side. Go? Don't stop for me. But she didn't listen. She reached out her hand, and for the first time, he saw the faint blue light gathering around her fingers. A pulse of energy rippled outward, invisible at first, then bursting into a flash that threw the hound backward, crashing it into a pile of wreckage. Sparks flew. Eli froze. What the hell was that? Vera's hand shook. Power, born with it. Hidden, forbidden. She looked terrified, not of the hound, but of herself. He didn't have time to process it. The second hound appeared on the ridge, leaping down with mechanical precision. Eli grabbed Vera's hand. Then use it again. She shook her head. Can't, too weak. Eli's mind raced. He spotted an old mining skiff half buried nearby, a small hovercraft used for hauling scrap. Come on. They clambered into the cockpit. The controls were cracked, half the lights dead. Eli hit the ignition, nothing. Come on, come on. He slammed his fist against the console. The engine sputtered, coughed, then roared to life with a burst of black smoke. The hound lunged just as the skiff lifted off, claws slashing across the hull. Sparks flew, but they were airborne. Barely. The skiff swayed violently as Eli steered it between the wrecks. Hold on, he shouted. Vera clung to the seat, eyes wide with awe and fear as the junkyard turned into a blur below them. Behind, the hound gave chase, leaping from pile to pile with impossible agility. It launched a grappling claw. The hook slammed into the skiff's rear thruster. The engine sputtered. Damn it! Eli twisted the controls and pulled hard to the left. The skiff spun, slamming the hound against a jagged spire of metal. The creature screeched, tearing free but losing part of its limb. Eli exhaled shakily. You still with me? Vera nodded, clutching his arm. Yes, but others come. He followed her gaze. Far ahead, under the stormy sky, faint red lights moved, at least 3 more hunters advancing through the haze. There's an old outpost past those ridges, Eli said, scanning the map flickering on the console. Used to be a mining hub. Maybe we can hide there. The skiff's warning lights blinked red. Low fuel. Damaged thruster. No chance of outrunning anyone for long. But Eli wasn't ready to give up. We'll make it, he said. We always do. The words sounded hollow even to him, but Vera smiled faintly. Humans never stop, she said softly. Yeah, he said with a grim smile. That's kind of our thing. The skiff dipped low as another plasma bolt streaked past, lighting up the clouds. The Hound was still alive, crawling over the wreckage below. Eli pushed the throttle to maximum, the old craft shaking violently. He didn't know how much farther it could go, maybe a few more kilometers. But he'd burn every drop of fuel if it meant getting her out of here. As the outpost came into view, a cluster of ruined towers rising from the wasteland, Vera whispered something under her breath, words he couldn't understand. Her eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the faint fires of the burning horizon. What did you say? He asked. She looked at him, her voice trembling but clear. I said destiny found you. And as thunder rolled across the planet, Eli realized he might not just be saving her. She might be the one meant to change everything. The storm followed them like a living thing. Thunder rolled across the wasteland as Eli guided the skiff toward the silhouette of the old mining outpost. Half of its towers leaned at impossible angles, eaten away by rust and time. The words Outpost Delta 9 were still faintly visible on a shattered metal gate. It looked dead, but to them, dead meant safety. The skiff's engines sputtered as they landed behind a row of collapsed storage containers. Eli shut it down, letting the silence swallow them. The air reeked of ozone and burnt fuel. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Vera whispered, "They stop." Eli scanned the horizon. The storm and the dust made it impossible to tell. Maybe, he said, though he didn't believe it. But we can't stay out here. Come on. They slipped through the broken gate into the outpost's main hall. Inside was chaos, shattered consoles, twisted piping, shattered glass. The faint hum of old generators echoed somewhere deep below. Vera's glowing eyes swept the darkness. This place, human? Used to be, Eli said, brushing dust from a rusted control panel. Before the wars. Before people decided scrap was worth more than life. He found a working light strip and hit the switch. Flickering yellow light filled the room, revealing faded banners with the Earth Federation insignia. His chest tightened at the sight. He'd worn that same symbol once, back when he believed humanity still had a future. Vera moved slowly through the room, touching the torn flags. You fought for this? She asked softly. Yeah, Eli said. Once. Before the galaxy reminded us how small we were. Her eyes glowed brighter for a second. Small, but not weak. He smiled faintly. You sound like a human now. They explored deeper into the facility, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Every sound seemed too loud. Every shadow seemed alive. In one of the lower rooms, they found what looked like an old med bay, its machines covered in dust, but still intact. Eli brushed off a terminal and powered it up using his portable cell. The holographic display flickered weakly to life. Diagnostic system offline. Emergency power, 12%. The mechanical voice buzzed faintly. Maybe we can fix this place up, he said. Hide until they stop searching. Vera sat on a bench, exhaustion etched across her alien features. She looked so fragile, and yet, when she met his eyes, there was strength there. A quiet kind of courage. He pulled a medkit from the wall and knelt beside her. Let me check your injuries. She didn't resist, only watched him with a strange calm as he cleaned the dirt from her arms and wrapped her wounds. When his hand brushed hers, she flinched slightly, not from pain, but emotion. You care, she whispered. Of course I care, he said simply. You didn't deserve any of this. She stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, On my world, caring is dangerous. It shows weakness. Then your world's wrong, Eli said. Caring's the only thing that keeps us human. For the first time, she smiled. A small, genuine smile that softened her sharp features. Human heart, strange but beautiful. Before Eli could reply, the terminal beeped. He turned. The scanner had picked up movement near the perimeter. He checked the screen. 3 red blips. Moving fast. Damn it, he muttered. They're here. Vera stood immediately. I fight, she said, voice trembling but determined. Not hide again. No, Eli said firmly. You're too weak. Her jaw tightened. So are you. He almost laughed. She wasn't wrong. But he wasn't going to let her die out here. We'll outsmart them, he said. That's what humans do best. He rushed to the generator room and found an old defense terminal. The outpost had basic perimeter shields, mostly dead, but still holding a spark of energy. He rerouted power from the lights to the shield grid. The corridors went dark instantly, leaving only the faint hum of the barrier outside. The first explosion shook the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Eli ducked, pulling Vera behind a console. The second blast tore through the side wall, sending debris flying. Through the smoke, the shapes of the hunters appeared, tall, armored, eyes glowing red. Vera raised her hand again, blue energy flickering around her fingers. I can stop them. Not yet, Eli shouted. Wait until they're close. The lead hunter stepped through the smoke, scanning the room. Its voice was mechanical, calm. Human detected. Relinquish the fugitive, and your death will be swift. Eli stepped from behind cover, weapon in hand. You want her? You'll have to go through me. The hunter tilted its head. You are outmatched. Story of my life, Eli said, and fired. The plasma bolt hit the hunter's chest plate, staggering it. In that instant, Vera unleashed her power. A burst of blue energy exploded from her palms, slamming into the attackers like a wave. The shockwave shattered metal, scattering them backward. But the effort drained her completely. She collapsed into Eli's arms. He caught her, shaking her lightly. Vera, stay with me. Her eyes fluttered open weakly. I can't stop them long. Outside, the shield crackled, barely holding. The hunters regrouped. Eli looked at her, then at the flickering terminal beside him. An idea formed. Maybe we don't need to stop them, he muttered. Just trap them. He slammed the terminal's manual override, rerouting all remaining power to the core reactor. The warning alarms blared. Reactor overload initiated. Vera's eyes widened. You destroy this place? Yeah, he said grimly. And them with it. He lifted her in his arms and ran toward the far exit as the countdown echoed through the halls. Behind them, the hunters broke through the shield, their weapons lighting up the dark. Eli sprinted through the corridor, heart pounding, lungs burning. Almost there, he shouted. The exit hatch loomed ahead, but before he could reach it, the floor collapsed. He fell hard, the world spinning. When he looked up, Vera was gone, pulled from his grasp by one of the hunters. Vera, he roared, his voice echoing through the collapsing structure. Then the reactor alarm reached its final second, and the outpost erupted in light. The world ended in fire. Eli didn't feel the explosion, he became part of it. A blinding flash swallowed everything, turning sound into a roar that ripped the air apart. Metal screamed, walls collapsed, and heat surged through him like a tidal wave. Then came the silence. When his eyes opened again, everything was dust and red smoke. His ears rang, his body numb. He was lying under a twisted beam, half buried in debris. The smell of burnt metal and ozone filled the air. He coughed hard, pulling himself free. His arms shook, his ribs screamed, but he was alive. Somehow he'd survived. Vera, he rasped. Vera. No answer. Only the crackle of dying flames. He stumbled through the wreckage, calling her name again and again. The outpost was gone, a crater of broken steel and glowing ash. Each step sank into the hot dust. His heart hammered, fear burning through the pain. Then, through the haze, he saw movement, shadows against the smoke. 3 figures, armored, walking away from the blast site. One of them carried something, someone, slung over their shoulder. Vera. Eli froze, fury mixing with disbelief. She was alive, but they had her. He ducked behind a fallen girder, watching as the hunters moved toward a waiting dropship. Its engines hummed with cold precision, red lights flickering across its hull. They were taking her off-world. His breath quickened. He had no weapons, no strength, no plan. But giving up wasn't an option. Not now. He crawled closer, each movement scraping against torn metal. The wind howled through the ruins, covering the sound of his steps. His vision blurred from smoke and blood, but his focus was sharp. The dropship, the girl, the chance. When the last hunter climbed aboard, Eli broke cover. He ran. Every part of his body screamed in protest, but his mind had gone past pain. He charged through the smoke and jumped, grabbing the landing gear just as the ship lifted off. The sudden jerk nearly tore his arms from their sockets. The ground fell away. Beneath him, fire and debris shrinking into darkness. He clung to the cold steel, wind tearing at his face. The ship climbed higher, its engines rumbling like thunder. For a moment, he almost lost his grip. But the thought of Vera, terrified, alone, lit something inside him stronger than pain. Not today, he growled through clenched teeth. The ship broke through the smog layer, emerging into the thin upper atmosphere. The stars burned faintly through the orange haze. Eli reached for the maintenance hatch on the underbelly and forced it open using his knife's plasma edge. He pulled himself inside, dropping into a narrow compartment filled with pipes and wires. The air was thin and hot. He coughed, trying to stay quiet. Footsteps echoed from above. The hunters were moving her into the main cabin. He could hear their distorted voices through the metal walls. Target secured. Preparing stasis transport, one said. Priority transmission to command, another replied. The bounty will double once confirmation is received. Eli clenched his fists. They were selling her, turning her over for credits, or worse. He crawled through the crawl space, following the sound until he found a maintenance vent. Through the slats, he saw Vera, unconscious, lying on a cold metal table. Her wrists were bound by glowing restraints. The hunters surrounded her, scanning her vitals. Rage boiled inside him. He spotted a control panel nearby. A plan began to form. Half crazy, half suicidal. Exactly the kind humans specialized in. He pulled out the knife again and sliced into a coolant pipe. Steam hissed out, filling the crawl space. Then he ripped two power lines free and jammed them together. Sparks flew. The lights flickered across the ship. Warning, core fluctuation detected. An automated voice blared. The hunters froze. What? One started to say. That's when Eli kicked open the vent and dropped down into the cabin. He hit the deck hard, rolled, and came up with the plasma knife raised. Let her go, he shouted. The nearest hunter turned, swinging its rifle, but Eli was already moving. He ducked under the shot, lunged forward, and drove the knife into the alien's chest. The blade sizzled through armor and circuits. The creature spasmed and fell. The second hunter fired, the beam grazing Eli's shoulder, burning through cloth and skin. Pain seared through him, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the rifle from the fallen one and fired back. The bolt hit the shooter's helmet dead on, dropping it instantly. The third hunter, larger than the rest, slammed into him from the side. Eli hit the wall, the rifle skidding away. The alien's hand clamped around his throat, lifting him off the ground. You are only human, it hissed. You cannot win. Eli's vision dimmed. His free hand groped for something, anything, until it found the emergency panel behind him. He slammed it open and hit the red button marked cargo release. The ship jolted violently as the floor hatch beneath them began to open. Wind howled through the cabin. The hunter's grip slipped just enough for Eli to grab its arm and twist with everything he had. The alien lost balance and fell straight through the open hatch into the burning clouds below. Eli collapsed, gasping for air. He crawled to Vera, cutting her restraints with the knife. Hey, he said softly, shaking her shoulder. Wake up. We're not done yet. Her eyes fluttered open, faint, glowing, scared. Eli, you came. Of course I did, he said, forcing a grin. You think I'd let the universe take you without a fight? The ship's alarms blared louder, hull breach detected. Altitude unstable. Eli glanced at the controls. They were losing altitude fast. We're going down, he said. Hold on to something. He grabbed the controls, trying to steady the descent. Flames licked the windows. The ground rushed up to meet them. Brace, he shouted. The dropship slammed into the wasteland with a deafening crash. The world turned to fire again. And then, silence. Silence. That was the first thing Eli noticed. Not the pain, not the smoke, not even the blood dripping down his arm. Just the deep, heavy silence after the storm. The ship had crashed half buried in the desert of scrap and ash. One wing was gone. The hull was cracked open like a tin can. Flames flickered weakly, casting ghost shadows against the metal walls. Eli coughed, forcing himself upright. Every bone in his body ached. His right shoulder was badly burned, and blood seeped through his torn jacket. But he was breathing, and that meant he wasn't done yet. He looked around. Vera. No answer. His heart stopped for a second, then he heard it. A faint cough, followed by a weak voice. Eli. He stumbled over debris until he found her pinned under a broken support beam. Her face was pale, her skin bruised, but she was alive. Her silver hair glowed faintly under the dim light, like moonlight through smoke. Hold on, he said, grabbing the beam. His muscles screamed as he lifted it, inch by inch, until she slid free. She fell into his arms, trembling. You saved me, she whispered. He gave a tired smile. We're even now. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind howled through the cracks, carrying the smell of burnt circuitry and dust. Then Vera's eyes flicked upward. They come again. Eli followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. 3 small drones drifted in the sky above, their red optics scanning the crash site. The hunters' recon units. If they found them alive, the rest of the pack wouldn't be far behind. He pulled her closer to the broken cockpit. We have to move. Now. They climbed out through the jagged hole in the ship's hull, stumbling into the open wasteland. The horizon stretched endlessly, broken ships, melted towers, and the faint glow of distant storms. In the distance, something shimmered, a faint blue light among the wrecks. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. What is that? Eli asked. Vera's expression changed, shock, then recognition. The beacon, she whispered. It calls my kind. Eli frowned. Your kind? She nodded slowly. It's old, built before I was born. A hidden station. If I reach it, I can send a signal to the royal fleet. So your people can find you, Eli said. And end this. Vera hesitated. Or destroy everything. If my brothers hear it first, they'll come with armies. Eli stared at her. The idea of summoning an alien fleet to this dead world made his blood run cold. But the drones were closing in. They didn't have options. He took her hand. Then we make sure it's you who sends that signal, not them. The journey to the beacon was brutal. The terrain was jagged and unstable, the air thick with dust. Each step was a struggle. Vera limped, leaning on Eli for balance, while he ignored the sharp pain in his side. Hours passed. The sky grew darker, lightning flashing in the distance. When they finally reached the source of the blue light, Eli stopped in awe. It wasn't a beacon tower. It was an ancient ship, half buried in the desert, its hull glowing faintly with alien energy. The design was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Smooth, elegant, almost alive. Vera's voice trembled. This is the Seraphis. My father's ship, lost before I was born. Eli looked at her. Your father's? You mean? Yes, she said. The king of Tyrus Prime. The truth hit him like a hammer. The girl he'd pulled from the dirt wasn't just a runaway. She was the heir to an empire, and the galaxy's most hunted prize. She stepped toward the hull, placing her hand on the glowing surface. The ship responded instantly. The light spread beneath her fingers, patterns awakening like veins of fire. A voice echoed, calm, melodic, ancient. Royal DNA confirmed. Awakening sequence initiated. The ground trembled as the ship came alive. Panels shifted, engines hummed, dust rising in a swirling storm. Eli stumbled back, shielding his face. What did you just do? I called it home, she said softly. The drones above locked onto the rising energy spike. One of them descended fast, charging its plasma cannon. Eli grabbed a fallen rifle from the wreckage. Get inside, he shouted. He fired, hitting the drone mid-flight. It exploded, scattering fire across the sand. The others returned fire, plasma bolts streaking through the air. Vera turned toward the ship. It's opening. A ramp unfolded from the hull, glowing with blue light. Eli fired again, destroying the second drone, but the last one swooped low, too fast to aim. He pushed Vera aside as the beam hit the ground where she'd stood. The explosion threw him backward. His head slammed into the ground. For a moment, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, Vera was kneeling over him. Eli, wake up. Her voice cracked with fear. He blinked, dazed. I'm still here. She smiled faintly through tears. Always. Behind her, the Seraphis pulsed brighter, like it recognized her emotions. A deep, resonant hum filled the air. Then, out of the storm, dark shapes appeared on the horizon, the hunters. More of them than before. Eli forced himself to stand, gripping the rifle. Get inside. Start whatever that thing's doing. What about you? She asked, terrified. He chambered a shot. I'll buy you time. Vera shook her head, tears streaking her face. You'll die? Eli smiled, tired, determined. Then I'll die doing something that matters. The wind roared. The hunters advanced. The Seraphis' engines glowed brighter, ready to rise. Eli stood between the girl and the oncoming army, one human against the impossible. And for the first time in years, he felt alive. The storm howled across the desert of metal and ash. Lightning cracked against the horizon, illuminating the battlefield like flashes of war. Eli stood before the rising Seraphis, battered, bloodied, and armed with a single stolen rifle. In front of him, the hunters advanced, dark silhouettes moving through the dust, glowing red eyes burning through the storm. He took a deep breath. Come on then, he whispered. Let's see what monsters bleed. The first plasma bolt streaked toward him. He dove aside, returning fire, each shot bright against the gloom. He hit one. Its armor cracked, circuits sparking, but there were too many. Behind him, the Seraphis' engines roared louder, shaking the ground. Vera's voice echoed faintly from inside. Eli, get in. He ignored it. Not yet. The hunters closed in, fanning out in a circle. They moved with machine precision, rifles raised, silent as death. Eli's rifle clicked empty. He threw it aside and pulled his plasma knife, its blue blade humming. He charged. He cut through the first one with a roar, slashing upward into its throat. Sparks exploded, oil spraying across his face. The next swung its arm. He ducked, rolled, stabbed again, straight through its chest plate. Each strike hurt more than the last. His body screamed for rest. His wounds reopened, but he refused to stop. Humans had a habit of not knowing when to quit, and Eli Grant was no exception. One of the hunters spoke through its translator, voice distorted and cold. Human, surrender. You are flesh. We are metal. You cannot win. Eli wiped blood from his mouth and grinned through the pain. You're right, but I don't need to win. He turned. The Seraphis was lifting off, the blue light from its core growing so bright it painted the world in sapphire fire. Inside, Vera was standing at the command console, her hands glowing as she interfaced with the ship's neural core. The vessel's systems responded like it was alive. Come on, wake up, she pleaded. He's still out there. The ship answered. Its voice filled the storm. Acknowledged. Royal protocol override. Guardian detected. A pulse of energy erupted from the Seraphis, expanding outward like a shockwave. The first line of hunters was thrown into the air, crushed under invisible force. Eli fell to his knees, dazed by the blast. Above him, the ship floated fully awake, wings of light unfurling from its sides, ancient and magnificent. It wasn't just a ship, it was a relic of a forgotten civilization, reborn through the bond between human and alien. Vera appeared at the hatch, reaching out to him. Eli, please. He stumbled toward her, limping, blood dripping down his arm. Another blast tore past him, the heat burning his back. He turned and fired one last shot, straight into the reactor core of a fallen hunter. The explosion lit the desert like a second sun. The shockwave threw him forward. He hit the ramp, sliding halfway up before collapsing. Vera ran to him, catching his head in her hands. Eli, stay with me. He smiled weakly. You did it, you got your ship back. Tears welled in her glowing eyes. Because of you. The ship's systems spoke again. Enemy reinforcements detected. Orbital signature inbound. Vera looked to the sky, massive shadows breaking through the clouds. Her brother's fleet had arrived. Eli coughed, forcing himself upright. Then we fight again. She shook her head. No, you've done enough. He gripped her hand tightly. No such thing. She looked into his eyes, 1,000 emotions in one heartbeat, then pressed her forehead against his. You taught me what your kind calls courage. The Seraphis' core flared to life. The ancient weapon systems, dormant for decades, awoke one by one. Gigantic cannons unfolded from the hull, glowing with power. Vera rose, her expression fierce. My father's blood made me royal, she said softly. But a human taught me how to fight. She raised her hands. The ship responded. Energy built until the ground shook. From above, the enemy fleet opened fire, a storm of plasma and light raining down. But the Seraphis roared back, unleashing a beam that split the sky in two. The explosion was blinding, a pillar of blue fire reaching into orbit, tearing through the enemy flagship like paper. Inside the cockpit, alarm screamed. Vera struggled to control the power. It's too much, she cried. Eli, barely conscious, looked at her through the smoke. Then give it everything. The ship obeyed. One last surge, a blast that erased the battlefield. The hunters were gone. The sky cleared. And then, finally, silence returned. When the light faded, the Seraphis hovered above a silent desert, its glow dimming. The storm was gone. The horizon was calm. Inside, Vera knelt beside Eli. He was pale, still, his chest rising weakly. She held his hand against her heart. You kept your promise, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Told you, humans don't quit. Her tears fell on his face, glowing blue in the ship's light. Sleep, Eli Grant. Humanity will never be forgotten. As the Seraphis rose into the stars, its engines burned bright against the endless dark, carrying the story of one human who defied extinction, who proved that courage wasn't born from strength or rank, but from the fire that refuses to die. And somewhere in the vast silence of space, the universe remembered. Humanity may break, but it never bows.